Good morning, everyone. This is DGD204 Simulation for Games. We are on week 6. It's the 25th of March 2026, and it's just 1 week before the midterms. So I have actually started recording after a little bit of morning rant because you asked me what will be the midterm. So here is the rundown. The midterm will be a paper exam. For those of you who haven't attended, who couldn't attend the previous classes, the midterm will be a paper exam, sit down exam. So the faculty will post a notice about the midterms. You will look at the time and the date. I think it will probably be at the same time and date as today. Uh, and you will go to the campus. They will point you to a classroom and they will point you to a seat, or maybe they won't, and you will sit down and you will do the exam. Now, what it will cover, if you're asking, is basically everything we talked about up to this point and also one Udemy course. Don't worry, the course is only 1 hour. I decided not to ask about the second course, which is 2 hours long. So that 1 hour course is posted on Classroom, Google Classroom. The link is there. It's free. So you will create a Udemy account if you don't already have one, and you will watch that course 1 hour. The thing is, that is the official course of Machinations.io, the software that package that we will be using for this the rest of this course after the midterm. So I want you to have a head start on Machinations so that I won't have you teach you the very basics. So from that standpoint, you have some work to do. I will try to hold a session later this week, maybe Friday evening, and show you the basics of machinations. Uh, but don't count on it. All right. I will do my best, but don't count on it and don't say, oh, but you didn't hold a special session about the machinations. I'm telling you very explicitly, you are. Let me actually show you that course. Now, where is the share screen button, for example? That one is gone. As you can see, Witcher. So let me find the classroom. This is our class. So Esin Dilara is here. So let me take, hello, let me take another attendance real quick because then I will forget that you were here as well. So you can see this. As you can see, the playlist is here. And I want to point out again, this playlist is the ultimate link. So it will not be updated. I will update the playlist, but I will not be posting you new links every week. You have to scroll down, find this, or maybe you want to save this list, right? Uh, but I will be posting the whiteboards weekly, and this will be the last one before the midterm. But anyway, here is that post. For those of you who don't remember, we couldn't hold the week 4, so I posted you this instead. You can watch this instead of coming to the class today. So this one, Machinations Essentials, and it's actually 1 hour on demand video. It's just 1 hour, okay? There's also this one. Progression systems for game economy designers, and this is 2 hours. So I advise you look at this one too, but this is the one. Fundamentals. So running simulations, play, step. This is the very basics, all right? And it's, I mean, you can watch it in chunks and know what it is because I will ask you simple things like, for example, how to run a simulation or steps, resources, this kind. Why am I not? No, I'm inside. Go to course. I will not be doing this now. There are things I want to tell you, but you are responsible of this as well. You have been warned. Don't tell me, uh, don't email me saying, but we didn't see this topic in classroom. Yes, you didn't. And yes, you are responsible. Anyway, does that answer your questions about the midterm.
Yes, hocam.
Yes. Wonderful. So let's move on to this part. And as you can see, I have my crayon back. So rejoice. Anyway, so today I will tell you about feedback loops in simulations, and I have to write it better. Actually, let me bring up my notes brought to you by my lovely friend Gemini from Google. I had a little back and forth brainstorming about how to structure the course for this week. So where is it? Okay, so basic notes. You don't see them. You're not supposed to. But I will tell you about feedback loops and specifically feedback loops in game design because or in game simulations because that's what we are after, right? If I can only write spell properly. And this thing should actually scale down. Haha, look at this. I'm so crafty. All right. So, but before we begin, do you have an idea what I'm talking about? What is the feedback loop? Any opinions? I mean, this is a technical term. Actually, it's a mathematical technical term in the control theory. So I'm not expecting you to know what it is. I'm just curious about what it feels like to you. What does it mean to you when you just see the words? What do you think it can be?
Feedback is when someone criticizing your work and saying what's wrong. And loop is, what is the loop? That means, uh, mm,
So wonderful. Thank you, Nikita. So when we bring them together, now we know what feedback is, obviously, and we know what loop is, obviously. So when we bring them together, it happens something like this. In a system, it doesn't necessarily have to be a simulation. In real world systems, in our body, we have feedback loops everywhere. What it means is you have a system, and let me draw this better. Now, what do we generally expect? We have inputs, right? And we have outputs. This is how we see a system in general. And when you think about it, a simulation is such as well, right? Because let's take our own domain. Let's think about a game. The player gives the input. The system, let me write it better for you. This is our model. If you remember from the previous lectures, model are the rules, and simulation is the act of running this, right? Now, this is what we have seen so far. I have a model and I'm running a simulation of that model. And also, since I am a game designer, we are talking about games, we are giving an input to the game, generally with our controllers or our peripherals, keyboard, mouse, whatever, and we are getting an output. And this is generally the monitor and the speaker, right? We see and hear things. Now, the feedback loop happens when you feed this output. Actually, I'm not going to bore myself with it. When you feed this output back into the system. Does it make sense? Because it's a feedback, the output is given back into the system as well, right? And it's a loop. So, do the words sit at a proper place in your mind right now. We are talking about feedback, feeding the output back into the system, and it's a loop. All right. So, uh, what kind of places do we use this, right? Or where do we encounter such a thing, a feedback loop? Now, if you think about real world examples, for example, biology, our body works with feedback loops, basically, all across the board. For example, what is our ideal body temperature? 36.5 Celsius degrees, right? Now, how does how do you think our body regulates this? Because when you think of it as a system, your body has a core temperature, right? And unless you are sick, it stays there. So think about it. When you are somewhere very hot, you start to sweat, right? And when you are somewhere very cold, you start to shiver and uh, bring that temperature back up. So your body does things to keep it stable at 36.5 Celsius degrees. And do you know why it is this? Do you know why we need to save this body temperature, preserve this? Any idea? This is off topic, but I'm just curious. This is the optimum temperature for an animal cell to survive. So, you know, this egg like thing that is our cell, they need this temperature to survive properly. So, for example, so that's why we try to maintain this. But imagine that you are a controller, right? A chip that is tasked with preserving the temperature of a system. So this is you are your brain, right? As you see, as you know, I draw a fantastic brain every single time. So you are inside this. You are the brain and you are inside the body. And your job is to keep this body and yourself alive. And the way to do that is to maintain this temperature throughout the body. How can you do this if you don't know the current temperature of the body? Does it make sense? So what has to happen is, let's draw this temperature as, you know, the classical thermometer value. Now, what the brain does, the control center does is read the temperature, and if it's above normal, do the things to drop the temperature. If it's below normal, do things to increase the temperature, right? And then read it again. Does it make sense? Okay, so let me put it this way. Another example. You have a bladder, right? In Turkish, I'm sorry, sidik torbası. And this thing fills up, right? So what does the body do? The brain, again, our control center here, what does it do? It senses how full it is, right? And then if it is too much, it sends a signal to flush it out. So you need to go to the bathroom. Does it make sense? This loop. So the brain constantly has to measure how much, how full your bladder is. So it can flush it out when the time comes, when it's too much. The same goes for your body temperature. The brain always measures the temperature so it can regulate it. Or, another example, for example, for you, you own a car. This is the classic children's car that the children draw. And your car has a fuel tank, right? Somewhere around here, doesn't matter. And how do you know when to get more fuel for your car? How can you know? Come on, you know the answer to this one. How do you know when to fuel your car? Really? Nobody knows? Yeah, but how do you know the fuel tank is empty?
In a car, there is a
Yeah,
near
I mean,
the
we have this thing that says full
yeah,
or empty, right?
this thing. I don't know the English name, but it always indicate how much gasoline you have left. And
So what
it's
happens is this fuel gauge always measures the amount of gas in the tank, right? And you look at this and you say, oh my God, well, I mean, this tank is full. So this doesn't count. It has to be like this. And you say, oh my God, I have to buy fuel, right? And you go and put more fuel into the tank. Now, this is a feedback loop because you cannot know to put fuel into this unless you observe this. Does it make sense now, Ismail Emre's iPad? Wonderful. Anybody else know what I'm talking about now? So this is technically, it's everywhere, all around us. This is how systems work. The system has to take its output. This is the output and feed it back into the system. All right? And based on that input, you can make a meaningful decision. Because if you noticed, I didn't tie this around to here. No, the output is not the only input. We provide the input. I put in the gas. I go to the bathroom, right? So the output is fed into the system as another parameter. Now, in terms of body regulation, there is no manual input. We don't do it manually. The body just does it by itself. All right. But in case of hunger, your stomach sends signals to your brain that you are hungry, right? And you feel the hunger and you try to balance that out. If your stomach doesn't send you any signal about being hungry, you won't remember to eat. And that is when the feedback loop is not closed. The system just goes off without knowing what's going on. Does it make sense? So a feedback loop is a system where the output of the system is fed back into it as an or another input. Or let me write it like this, as another or the only input. All right? Does it make sense now what I mean when I say a feedback loop? All right. So, and this is the thing. Now, there are two types of feedback loops. There is the, and this is very actually easy to remember. There is the positive feedback loop and the negative feedback loop. Now, one of them is what we see in our life all the time and what we want to achieve actually. The other one is a problem in all aspects of life. And from the name, you might think positive is the one we are trying to achieve and negative is the one we are trying to avoid, but it's the other way around. So let me actually write it down here. And this will be technical, but you are grown up people, you can take it. So you are intelligent young people, you can understand this. Positive is when the feedback increases the response, increases the output, let's say. All right. And in the negative feedback, the feedback decreases the output. So, what do I mean by that? In negative feedback, we do it like this. This is minus, all right? And in positive feedback, this is plus. So, why do we like this one and not like this one? Let me tell you. So, in positive feedbacks, what I put into the system always enhances it, increases it. So, let's say, imagine you have a car again, right? And you have a speed, and the car is driving itself, all right? So, my car, this time it's a Volvo, as you can clearly see from the, I mean, I should have been an artist. I'm so good at this. Anyway, the car is speeding, right? And I take the speed and feed it back into its computer. So the car is going with 50, for example, and I feed it back. And in a positive feedback loop, it increases this and then increases this because every feedback is trying to push the system in the same direction that it's already going. Can you see where this is going? It's going to dangerous levels. Now, in a negative feedback loop, if I have the same car and it's going with 50, let's say, now I'm feeding this back into it, right? And for example, in negative feedback loops, I have a baseline. Let's say my baseline is the speed limit there is 60, right? Now I compare it, I take it to 60. Or, all right, in the next one, I take it to 70. And the system, when it feeds the 70 back in, says, whoa, wait a second, it's too much. I have to subtract something. And generally what happens is this. As the system increases it, it becomes 58, 63, oh, too much. 58, oh, too much. 63, all right. So this is technical, but what it tries to do is to get it back around a level. This is the same with body temperature. Our body temperature is 36.5 Celsius degrees. If it increases too much, the brain tries to bring it down. If it goes down, it tries to bring it back up. So it always tries to do the opposite of it. All right? This is a negative feedback loop. In the positive feedback loop, the system just takes off. So, that being said, I think your brains have been scrambled up enough already. All right, so let's take a break. Oh, Ali Rıza, you want to say something? Okay.
Sadece bende mi bilmiyorum ama sesiniz yankı yapıyor.
Really? I wonder
Ya
why that is. How about now?
konuşmanız gerekiyor test etmem için.
Test, deneme, deneme. 1, 2, deneme.
Şu an yapmıyor hayır.
Şu anda yapıyor mu? Şöyle buradan.
Yapmıyor
I
hayır.
will just
Devam.
put the mic in my mouth like this. All right. So let's take a 5-minute break. The thing is, I think right now you are a little bit confused. I think so. So I will take a 5-minute break, and then before starting the next lecture, I will summarize this entire thing in Turkish. I apologize for the non-Turkish speakers, but at least I can do that for the Turkish speakers to make them understand a little better. So let's take 5 minutes off, then I'll be back. If you want to have a quick recap in Turkish, you'll be back too. See you. Okay, everyone, welcome back. As I promised, I made a small Turkish recap, but I just skipped that part. Maybe I should have recorded that, but you got it. You got that. All right. But here is the thing. Let's get back into it. A quick recap again. The positive feedback is about growth of a system. Okay. So it tries to take the system in one direction. And as it goes in that direction, the effect increases. The negative feedback is about stability. And this is, by the way, this is a huge thing in mathematics. All right. And there is a field called control theory. If you're not an engineer, it will feel pretty complicated and stupid to you, but it's actually very important. Just an example from my background, when I was an engineering student, it was very interesting to me back then. There's a plane, I think it was called X-10 or something, and the plane is something like this. This is the fuselage, meaning the body, right? And this is the rear. This is the top-down view, by the way. And the plane's wings are like this. Something like this. This is different, from a traditional plane, again, top-down, where the wings are like this, right? Or at the very least, if you have seen any biplanes or those old planes, the wings are like this, right? Now, maybe you never thought why. In commercial big airplanes, they are more like this. In smaller airplanes, it's more like this, but never like this. Because when you actually solve the equation for these wings structures, okay, this one is stable. This one is very stable. And this one is very unstable. Which means, let me give you an example. You are the pilot and you let go of the yoke. Yoke is the joystick for the aircraft, all right? You let go of the yoke. This one keeps flying forward, no problem. This one keeps flying forward for a very long time, no problem. You can let go of it and it will just go. This one just starts doing stupid stuff and starts plummeting down on the earth because the flight is not stable at all with this wingspan. And it is very precise negative feedback loop in electronics that keep this thing flying in the air. Without the computers, this thing cannot fly. As I said, this thing can fly without computers. This thing can fly without computers. These two are no problem because they are stable systems. All right? But this one cannot. So they use very precise negative feedback to ensure stability of a system. All right? So But let's think about games, all right? Because that's what we are here for, and that's what I'm going to ask you actually in the midterm. Eh, let's say a positive feedback system. What kind of a game do you think could use a positive feedback system? It's actually something that you probably know, very popular these days, the type of game that it is. Do you have an idea? And this is actually the only game genre that I can think of that does use a positive feedback system like this, because all others probably use negative feedback systems. But this is the, wait for it, incremental games. You know what they are? No, not MOBA. Clicker style of games, idle style of games. Do you know what these are?
Yeah, just clicking and wasting time.
Exactly. So these these three are generally bundled into one: incremental idle, incremental clicker, whatever. There are very good versions out there. If you don't know, the classical version is cookie clicker. You should definitely check it out. All right, because this is the one that sparked that craze. And another one that is, I think, is more stupid is adventure capitalist on mobile. These are the ones that started it out, okay? And then nowadays there are more modern versions, like one of the most famous ones, Dixium, and a game about feeding a black hole. These are the ones I have played recently. And there is Max Manus, and there is Feed the Reactor. Uh, I'm giving these out to you in case you are curious about the genre, because let me tell you something. These games are fair, well, not very, but they are fairly easier to make than other games. And each of these games, as of now, has made at least $500,000 in revenue. So these games are in. And if you want to make it in the game, this is a good entry point. I am actually making one myself. So let's compete. Let's see which one of our games will make more money. But anyway, yes, exactly, Dohan. Thank you. This comes from a very psychological uh, thing, that number go up, me happy kind of thing, right? Because, by the way, let me tell you, uh, Cookie Clicker is a good example because it has other mechanics. You don't just click. You do other things. There are grandmas, there are dragons. All right, enough said. I don't know about Adventure Capitalist. It was just a very big hit on mobile. Dixium is a short game, but especially Feed the Reactor has you min max things, and feeding a black hole is good as well. Anyway, so I'm just telling you this as a side note, that if you want to start game dev at some point, this could be a good area where you learn the ropes and also make some money on the side as an indie developer. But anyway, these are the games that generally use a positive feedback system because you want the number to go up. And as it goes up, you want it to go more up, if that makes any sense. That's not a real word. You want it to go up more and more and more. And as you know, these things start with one, two, and then you get to a 10, then 100, then 1,000, then 1,000,000, then 1,000,000,000, and then the number system blows up. All right? This is a positive feedback system. Does it make sense how it is used in games? You can also see it in other games where, for example, the player continuously gains experience. You don't lose experience, right? But there's a difference there because in games like that, for example, you are gaining XP, right? The amount of XP you gain doesn't automatically increase the amount of XP. You don't make more XP the more you have it. So this is not a good example. All right? Now let's come to negative feedback systems. In games. We see this a lot, especially, for example, in game economies. We will look at this in very much detail in machinations, but what is a game economy? Let's say you are a player, right? And you slice and you have a sword in your hand, let's say, and there are monsters. Wow, I can make a game out of this. Anyway, you slay the monster, by which its eyes has to be crosses, traditionally. You slay the monster, and it drops some coins, right? And these coins go into your purse. Now, imagine the amount of coin that you have has increased. It is 30 gold pieces. Now you go slay more monsters, and it becomes 40, 50, 60. Again, this is not a positive feedback loop because the amount of money doesn't increase by making more money. It always increases the same amount. But you are having a problem if the player never spends this. Does it make sense? Imagine a game where you have so much money that you don't care about anything in the game anymore. You can just buy any item, right? You don't have to grind for it because you can just go to a vendor and buy that item, right? So this is how game economies actually collapse when they are not designed well. So players make money and players have to spend that money somewhere. So making money and spending money are very important so that they lead to each other. In a good game economy simulation, if you make the money, you have to spend the money. So imagine there is someone who is still playing World of Warcraft here, right? We talked about that. Now, when you want to send a message to another player in World of Warcraft, it was like that. I think it is still so. You have to pay a postage fee of 10 copper or something. Is it still so? Who is playing World of Warcraft? I'm going to find
Not
out.
anymore, sir.
Sorry?
You can just send message to him.
Yeah,
It
but
don't
you have
require cost.
there was a postage cost back in the day. Is there still none?
Yeah, for message, yeah. I thought you just sent message. For mail, yeah, you have to pay.
Yeah, for a mail, right? So, and what do you send with a mail? You can send items, right? If they are not soul-bound yet. Uh, so, World of Warcraft has an in-game mail system, and it costs money. Why? Does it cost Blizzard anything to just send a mail to another player inside the game? No. But World of Warcraft players create coins out of nothing, right? Imagine the World of Warcraft world, Azeroth, right? And there are thousands of players in a server, and they're all killing mobs and doing quests and gaining money from that. So the amount of total money in the world is constantly increasing. Blizzard has to find a way to bring it back down. Otherwise, they will have the problem they had with Diablo 2. After a while, yes, we will talk about Sync Doan. Thank you very much. After a while, in Diablo 2, people had so much money that gold didn't actually matter. I want to buy something from you, and I ask you, how much is that stuff? And you say, I mean, 1 million gold, I guess. But what shall I do with 1 million gold? I already have 10 myself. So if it gets too much, money loses its value. And this is something the world actually knows very well. But in history, do you know where in history this happened? Actually, before WoW Token in Diablo 2, people solved it by finding rare items like Horadrim cubes and trading them as money, treating them as money. Because if the current currency, money, loses its value, people will find something else to trade with. It has always in Germany, exactly, Dovan. Thank you. You are on fire today. After World War One, let's make a quick side note here. After World War One, Germany was in such a bad shape that their economy totally collapsed. And at some point, people had to put money in bags, right? Chual, or to go buy a loaf of bread, because one loaf of bread cost somewhere around 1 billion marks. Mark was the currency of Germany at the time. So one loaf of bread has risen up to the cost of 1 billion marks. And the bills, the banknotes, were not there to support it. So people would tuck money into bags, take them to the bakery, and the baker would say, what am I going to do with this? And what did it lead to? It led to the Germans being so fed up with this BS that they elected a maniac who promised economic prosperity and started a war against all of the world, which led to World War II. And to be honest, this war leading to World War II lifted up Germany's economy so well, industrialized the entire country, and lifted the economy so well that they could carry on this war for years, for 6 or 7 years. They fought the entire world. I mean, they lost very badly in the end, thankfully. But again, the thing that led to World War II and all that bloodshed of millions of people across the board was Germany losing its complete economic power because of what England did to it, the Britain did to it in World War One. Because after World War One, they tore the entire Axis forces apart. They tried to do the same to Ottomans. Thankfully, we had a good leader, so we got out of it stronger as the Turkish Republic of Turkey. Right? Germany wasn't so lucky, so they got out of it by industrializing themselves, declaring war on people, causing a genocide, and causing the loss of 20, 30 million something people across the board. Thankfully, in games, it's not that grim. The most that can do is the game's economy collapses and players stop playing. Nobody dies, hopefully. But in game economies, and we have covered this now, you need a way for people to spend the money that they earn. A sink, as Dohan suggested. We will cover that in machinations. So game economies have to be negative feedback loops. Players make money, the game tries to take that money away from them. So another time when you're playing a game and the game needlessly asks in-game currency from you to do something, remember this. They are probably trying to bring the total amount of money in the system down. And it doesn't even have to be multiplayer. As I said, you are playing Witcher, for example, Witcher 3, right? Or another game, single player game. If you keep earning money in the game and there's nowhere to spend it, after a while you just don't care about money. I mean, a quest giver will offer you a reward of 500 gold and you will look at your 20,000 gold and say, nah, I mean, I don't care. There is no incentive for you, right? So game economies do this. Another thing, for example, who among you likes to play racing games? I mean, I think there is Forza these days. I used to love racing games back in the day, but these days I just don't play them that much. But my all-time favorite racing game is Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. There is no game like that that ever got that sense of speed. And by the way, interesting fact, if you know, you know. But you should definitely check it out. Episode 1 Racer. And they are, I think, remaking this. Let me write it full. It's a pain to get it to work on modern PCs. But if you can, Chan, wonderful. Thank you for. I know Growtopia. I know Utku. Unfortunately, a student of mine used to play Growtopia, and we don't go in there. All right. But anyway, Growtopia is the bane of all humanity. It's worse than Roblox. No, it cannot be worse than Roblox, but it is bad. Anyway, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. At least look it up if you are remotely into racing games. Because in this one, you go with speeds of up to 700, 800 kilometers per hour, right? And it gives you that feeling, truly. And very interesting that Ali Reza, you mentioned in Need for Speed Underground, because you mentioned two, but I will tell you one. When Need for Speed Underground first came out, it was groundbreaking. It was a wonderful game. You could modify your car, etc., etc. Çağan Deniz talked about Need for Speed Underground. Ali Reza, it wasn't you, it was Çağan Deniz. Anyway, so, but the thing is, this game had an excellent sense of speed. I mean, not this much, but it really made you feel dashing through the streets and dodging cars. And you know who made this game? The guys who made this game. So they knew a thing or two about how to make you feel the speed, right? Anyway, if you are playing racing games, you know this thing called rubber banding. It's also a networking term, but I'm not talking about that one. And rubber banding, I think you know this one, but you are around the racetrack in racing games. You are around the racetrack, and this is you. Why is this so thin? Woman, come on. Let's make it. You are here. Yao, not Yao, you. You are here. And these are your opponents, right? And this is the starting line, let's say, like this. Now, this guy is far behind you. This guy is a little behind you. This guy is ahead of you. This is far ahead of you. And in rubber banding, what happens is this guy starts to go faster. This guy is normal. This guy is normal. And this guy starts to go slower. So this guy slows down. So this guy speeds up. This guy slows down. And it might seem unfair, right? Because, I mean, I have passed this guy fair and square. Why is that guy speeding up? Because we are trying to make the gamer feel the rush of racing, not beat everyone to the dust and cruise around, right? So rubber banding means the racers behind you, AI racers behind you, speed up considerably to catch up to you, and the racers far ahead of you slow down deliberately so that you can catch up to them. So it tries to keep the racers in a bundle So there will be a conflict, right? This is a negative feedback loop. Another one, maybe you have heard of this one, in Mario Kart. Now, Mario Kart is a multiplayer game, so you are not playing necessarily against AI, but even if, and you do, players at the back get good uh, power ups that will help them get ahead. Players at the front, players at the lead, get worse power ups. This is a form of rubber banding, and rubber banding comes from the knowledge that when you stretch a rubber band too much, it tries to snap back, right? So you help the player win a little, right? In this case, and you help the player lose a little in this case. Does it make sense? Does it? Okay, so this is a wonderful example of a negative feedback loop in a game from a control perspective, right? And for example, another one that is very popular these days is dynamic difficulty. If the player is having a hard time, what can you do? You can decrease enemy health, right? Increase player damage, for example, decrease enemy health or damage, increase player damage. You don't even have to tell them, right? Or you can make AI dumber. For example, you are playing, I don't know, an extraction shooter, or a PvE game, and the player is constantly having their bottom handed to them, right? And you tune down how smart the AI is so they can get some wins. And this actually happens in some matchmaking too. So, for example, you are playing Overwatch and you're in a winning streak, and the game just gives you a lose, puts you up with very good players, so that you will not say, "Oh, I'm too good at this. I can just get out of here." Instead, they put you with a very good team, so you will lose a game and you will want to get back. So this is a scummy practice, but they do that. If the player is having a good time, an easy time, just do the opposite of the above. All right? For example, dynamic difficulty in games is a negative feedback loop. You are trying to keep the player engaged, because if it is too difficult, they will just give up. If it's too easy, they will not bother to play, right? Unless they are a power player and they just enjoy crushing everyone and everything in their path, then yes, they will play if they want a power fantasy. But anyway, this is the thing, right? So, positive feedback loops, systems, negative feedback systems. As I said, we don't see positive feedback systems except maybe for incremental games, because it doesn't make sense for something to just take off, right? So, and let's put this red around. We are not going to talk about this or ask anything about this. But here is an interesting concept that you should know about. A sidestep thing about the game flow, or rather flow state. Have you heard of this? Now, this is a two-axis system. The bottom line is player skill. All right? And the vertical axis is challenge level. The core idea here in game design, this is an important concept actually. All right? Now, your game obviously will have an increasing challenge level, right? But for example, in a Souls-like, the challenge level increases considerably with the player skill, right? And then maybe after you gain a little skill, it plateaus a little bit. So we can call this a Souls-like, let's say. Right? But in other games, in cozy games, it goes pretty much like this. I'm trying to put you to two ends here. Because these are the people that don't want any challenge or suffering in the game. They just want to chill out and put some things on the ground, make a garden, or anything like that, right? And Souls-like players are definitely looking for the hurt and pain of trying to play that game. Now, all other gamers in between, they ideally want this, right? So this is the normal games. And when I say normal, you see the quotation marks here. It's kind of mockingly because when I say, I mean, you understand this. It's the general idea of things. Now, you cannot keep it like this, right? Obviously. What you can do is to have a channel here. Because it's impossible to maintain a perfect balance of skill versus challenge level throughout your entire game. But if you can manage to keep this inside this channel, so let's imagine it's something like this. I will make this thinner. So your game fluctuates in this. This is called the zone. Or this is if you keep the player inside this, we call this the flow state, because the player is always challenged proportionally with their skill. You don't put too much on them. You don't just tell them get good, right? Or you don't under challenge them. These are legit types of games, obviously. I'm not saying, but these are the two ends of the spectrum for specific type of people. But the normal gamer, let's say, want to fall into this line. If the game goes too hard for them, they will probably drop it. If the game feels too easy for them, they will again probably be bored and drop it. So, and as you can see, you can now see why I'm telling you this in this lecture, because this is a negative feedback loop for you as the game designer, right? Because as the game designer, it's not just the player that is having a feedback loop. You as the designer also try to keep your game at a certain challenge level. Now, how can you know what the player's skill will be at any challenge level? You can't, unfortunately. And there's one thing you have to do to ensure that you can maintain this flow state. It is, do you know what it is? Okay, it's a fun moment. What do you think we can do as we design our game, as we develop our game, to make sure that we can maintain this flow state? We can compare with other examples. but no two games are the same. If you are making a Vampire clone, Survivors clone, you can look at Vampire Survivors, but you won't be making the exact same game with as it, right? Exactly, Atabak. Playtest. There is no other way because your game is unique to itself. Playtest is the most effective way to ensure you can maintain the flow state. And there's actually a game studio that playtests extensively, and you might have heard of them. They are called Valve. They are very successful. Yeah, they playtest and then they playtest and then they playtest some more. And at some point at Valve, somebody asked, when should we playtest our game? And the answer was yes. So uh, from that thing, this is what we are doing, and I'm actually trying to. I will find something for you. I apologize for this. I will look at Google Drive and try to find because there is a feedback loop chart for game design, and I will show you that if I can find that. Pop, 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 pop. What was the name of that? The name of that was this was a series of lectures I gave at as an accelerator to a VC. I'm trying to remember their name. I will just say presentation. Okay. Found it. Is it this one? I'm not showing it to you the graphics, I know, but that says back of the line. So here, is it here? Is it here? It is here. Yes. I will steal the chart that I made myself and I will paste it here. All right. So let me move this. Let's see if it's in a good place. Let's call this double feedback loop of game design. Why is it double? Because you see two loops here. And actually, I apologize for this because the arrows are supposed to be this way. I did not realize that when I was making the graphics. So I will try to make up for it by doing this. Makes any sense? Can I pick the screen color? No, I don't care. Can I though? But this is not the place to learn. So let me just erase this part, these parts of it, and hope you will never notice. So, as I said, as game designers, we are in a feedback loop ourselves, right? Because this is the starting point, but this is the actually important part. You start the design and you build a prototype and you play test it. Then you evaluate your results. This is actually where we feed the output back into the system, right? You can see this is a loop. And this is actually the part where we make decisions. So let me just, the system where we make decisions, all right? We start here because we start with an idea, but we can actually start here. or rather, let's do it like this. Let's not bother, all right? So it's just a starting point, doesn't matter. Because what happens is we evaluate. So you see, this is the output that we create, and then we put it back into our decision-making process. And at this point, if you say, we built a prototype, we play tested it, and we are now looking at the results. It's good. Then we implement it into our game. We run the Q&A, which is a very specialized kind of testing. It's not just sitting down playing the game. Q&A has a very special workflow, but it is again basically playing the game, right? If I can just erase it like this. And then you play test. Then again, this is another loop. It produces an output. It produces a game system created in the game, and you evaluate the result. You see if it is good. And after this, you can design another system, right? And here is the interesting thing. You start designing something, you build a prototype, you play test it, and you look at the results and you say, this is not good. Then you go back to design, you build a prototype, you play test, you evaluate, and you say, okay, this one is good. And you implement it. And you run Q&A and play test and come back, and you might say, this is not quite the way we wanted. So maybe you go back to implementation, run Q&A, play test, and come back here. Does it make sense? You are doing something. Basically, you design something or you build something. This arm is the design arm. This arm is the build arm. Right? And then you look back at what happened. You take it in as feedback, right? Then you decide what to do next. This is our feedback loop as game developers. I hope it makes sense. Does it? Wonderful. So it doesn't just have to be a simulation when it's a feedback loop. As I said from the beginning of the course, feedback loops are all around in our lives, our bodies, the systems that we live in, right? The economic system, our car, the trees growing, blah blah blah, whatever. But from our perspective, it's our systems in the games, and we design them with a purpose in mind. And we ourselves are a part of it. When we design our games, we have our own feedback loops of design. We do something, we look at our result, and based on that result, we make changes and we go through it again. All right? There's one thing I realized I forgot to tell you all the way up here in the feedback loops part. And that is, do we have space for it? Okay, let's put it up here. Now, in our case, the feedback loop, the system is the game, right? Let's do it like this, actually. And we have the output, which is as I said, the graphics and audio. Never forget the audio. It's a very important part of game design. And we have the input. So we have the input through controller, mouse and keyboard, or keyboard and mouse. What? B? Right? And for this one to be a full feedback loop, what do we need here? We need the player. right? The player has to see the graphics, hear the audio, and give feedback to the system based on what they see, right? I look at my health bar and decide to use a healing potion. This is a feedback loop because I want to keep playing the game, right? So I forgot to tell you this one. The game itself is a feedback loop with the player being the one closing it. Does it make sense? Okay, so I was going to tell you something about Expedition 33, but I don't remember. Ah, I remember. Now, has anyone played Expedition 33?
I did.
Okay, great game, first of all. Very well made. It's not AAA, it's AA. It's not indie. It has a publisher. It has been made by around 300 people. The core team is 30, but 300 people contributed. That is not indie anymore. Okay, let's get that out of the way. But the thing is, for example, you can get out of this. It does maintain that flow state a little bit, but you can see, well, how to put this. I don't want to make it seem, but you can see how it is made by a team that you can see it's the first time a team made a game like that. There are small things that tell all over the place, but you can break the game in this way. And that tells us one of two things. Let me tell you what happened first. In the main map, there's an overworld map like this, a big map, and you are a tiny character and you walk around on it. And then when you enter a location, you are a proper third person, right? Something like The Witcher. And in combat, it's a turn-based JRPG style. In the overworld, in the first area, because the game is very well gate locking places, you have to unlock a certain place to be able to go there and then come back. And then you cannot unlock the first area, second area, third area, for example. You have to unlock this one first. And then from there, you can unlock this one. And once you do that, you can come back here, but you can never go this way unless you lock this one first. The game does that very well. So these are basically difficulty levels. This area is more difficult than this one, and this area is more difficult than this one. You know the drill, especially if you play World of Warcraft. But there is one boss here in the very first area that is very difficult, has very high health, and hits very high damages, right? It's a sheep. I mean, it's not technically a sheep, but it's one of those things, just with a couple of horns, right? And this thing is relentless. It attacks you and it deals you such big damage. But the problem with Expedition 33 is if you learn how to dodge properly, you know, the game has a dodge and parry mechanic. It's a turn-based game, but if you press the dodge button at the very right moment, you can just not take any damage from an enemy attack. All right? That's the game's main mechanic. That's the thing that made it famous. So this guy, this sheep, is very difficult to dodge. But once you get it right by muscle memory and audio cues, you can do it reliably. So, and I'm not a quitter, all right? Because I figured if this guy is a boss, an optional boss, if this guy is in region 1, it should be beatable, right? And I spent around 2 hours, maybe, I don't know, played it maybe 100 times, and I beat this guy, all right? Before moving on to the second area. It was clearly designed to come back to it once you're strong enough. But I didn't do that. I just, I mean, I just got stubborn and I beat that thing up while I was in the first area. And it gave me so much experience points that I steamrolled the rest of the game. Because when I passed into area 2, I was already high enough level that I could beat anything else around in this place. And by the experience I gained here, I went into here and I steamrolled that. There were only, I think, 2 bosses that I could not beat in the game easily. All right. And I did not bother with them. Thankfully, the art style and the story are so engaging that I did not drop the game. But I got out of this very easily. And it's not because of the skill level. My skill level did not necessarily increase, but the game gave me so much experience beating that first boss that I instantly jumped somewhere around here. And then the rest of the game was like this for me. So this tells me that they did not think about that game design that much. But then again, let me tell you, it could have been a deliberate choice. They might have said, all right, if anybody wants to break the game, let them break the game. Because, to be honest, that's how we did it back in the 90s, guys. Back in the 90s, when you play the game, if you could find a way to break the game, you did. And most of the time, the developers didn't care because, first of all, most games were first person, single player anyway. If I break the game, who cares except for me? And also, there was no social media. So it was kind of like finding an Easter egg, a way to break the game. And then you would go to school and you would tell your friends about how you did that combo in that Mortal Kombat and you beat everything up. And they would do it as well. It was a way to spread the games. So sometimes it was done deliberately, and sometimes it was kind of like a sandbox playground. If you know me, you know one of my favorite games is Daggerfall, Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, and that game has no balance whatsoever. The game doesn't care. You want to be a mage, you're going to have a very hard time at the beginning. It will be almost like a Souls-like. But if you do manage to push through, you will just steamroll everything. There are combos in Daggerfall which will allow you to absolutely break the game, and the game doesn't care. Again, that's how we rolled back in the 90s. But that being said, I hope everything was, yeah, as a bard, it was crazy hard, right? I never did that. I I'm generally a sword and shield type of guy in my fantasy games, and then I play a mage. Yeah, battle mage is a good. I in Daggerfall I generally use a battle mage, my custom battle mage. I use a sword mage. You don't use any other weapon. You can use a long sword, and your casting abilities are increased. So, and it is so much fun to play. Go play that. Anyway, next week is the midterms. As I told you, I will be putting this record up there right now after the class, so don't worry about it. I will start uploading it right now. But uh, please go through the previous classes, previous sessions, if you are not sure about what we have covered. All right. I will try to ask easy questions. Okay. I will not go very hard asking very obscure things. So if you watch the lectures once again, or you take a very good look at the whiteboard notes, you will be pretty much all right. And don't forget, I will ask at least 10 points worth of questions from that Udemy course. And even though I will try to make an extra session for that Udemy course, I don't promise it. Good luck in all your midterms. Take care. You may stop playing games for this 1 week because you have midterms, but other than that, do play games and hopefully make them as well. All right. See you and goodbye.